Hi, everyone.
Hi, Lynn.
Do you want me to just start sharing my screen and get cracking, or?
Yeah, I think you can, if you want to maybe do a quick intro for yourself, just so everyone's aware of Evolare, and then, I'll let you get started. I'll let you take over.
Yeah, will do. So, hi, everyone. I'm Lynn, and I'm going to demystify GTM, or Google Tag Manager, specifically for arts, culture, and entertainment venues like yourselves. So this is going to be a practical, jargon-free session. So hopefully you'll find that the kind of setup that we'll go through really useful. We've got about 30 minutes for the actual presentation and then 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. I'm going to be talking you through how to set up Google Tag Manager itself and some common tags. So if you don't already have Google Tag Manager, feel free to sign up for that. It's not a massive sign-up process. You'll be able to do that within a few minutes, so that you've got that. Or if you already have Google Tag Manager, which I see from the poll some of you already do, you can have that open, and you can follow along and actually create some tags as well. As long as you don't publish anything, it's not going to affect anything that you've already got set up in there. So quick intro to me and to Evolare Digital. So I set up Evolare Digital in 2024 after spending 7 years in-house and then a following 6 leading the marketing functions at agencies, including After Digital, which specialised in supporting this very sector. I've worked with a super wide range of arts and culture and entertainment clients over the years, from small independent venues to multinational institutions, and some of the names you might recognise are up on the screen just now. So now that's out of the way. First, we're going to cover Google Tag Manager fundamentals. So from here on out, I'll probably start referring to Google Tag Manager as GTM, so just to take a note of that. So firstly, what is GTM? Tag Manager is a tag management system which has been created by Google to offer marketing professionals a really quick and easy way to add, update, and manage their marketing tags on their website and their apps without having to natively modify the website's code or using a developer. It's a free tool, so if you're not already using it, there aren't really many downsides to using GTM for your venue. But in my opinion, the 3 sort of main benefits are the fact that it tidies up tracking scripts on your website, so they all live within your GTM container, which is then published to the site. And for peppered customers, this is a super simple process of navigating to your control panel and adding in your container ID and your scripts there, so there's not even a need for a developer for you guys. And then also it has standardized sort of commonly used tags. They've been kind of adding this into the sort of template library over the years. So I think you'll probably find the majority of the tags that you will need to use are already there. It's a really simple setup. There's not as much need for customization nowadays. And also some platforms, Hotjar is actually a good example of this. They have an automated implementation process, so that will automatically set everything up in GTM if you have both Hotjar and GTM open. So a lot of platforms are now doing that and have full integration. And also, even though you've got all of these amazing standard tags that are super easy to set up, you can also add your custom tags as you kind of used to mainly focus on back in the day, and that kind of suits your more complex tracking requirements. But there are so many more useful features that are available. It is an extremely user-friendly platform, and like I said, the standard tag setup is pretty foolproof. And it also has a lot of pre-built templates, so if they're not in the kind of standard menu, you can find a lot of third-party tags in the template library. It's also an extremely collaborative platform, so you can give a lot of different sort of accesses. So if you're using an agency or freelancers, as well as many people within your own organization, you can manage accesses on that as well. But GTM on its own doesn't really provide any actionable insights. It exists to facilitate the transfer of data between platforms and ultimately pull user behavior into GE4 as events. So why should you start using it if you're not already doing so, or you have it, but you're not really getting the most out of it? It's extremely powerful for small marketing teams because you have the ability to add, pause, and remove scripts within a few clicks. Super efficient. And if your venue also has sort of no access or limited access to developers, or even restricted budget when it comes to web development costs, or you don't have a developer on retainer, GTM really is for you. And it also allows you to track more complex user journeys and pull behavioural data into GA4. It allows your venue a much deeper insight into your target audience through the facilitation of pulling these more advanced or custom events in, right from acquisition when they arrive on your site to completing a ticket purchase. So super handy tool. So in terms of what you can do with the platform, first, you can customize standard events that are tracked by GA4. So that's the ones that feature under enhanced measurement if you go into your Google Analytics account. So scroll is one of the standard events. As standard, that only tracks to 90% of your page scroll. It doesn't break it down any further than that. So you can customize this so that it tracks 10%, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 90% scroll depth pretty easily by setting up a custom tag. Also your outbound clicks. It basically, this is the standard one, it tracks if you have clicked to an external website, but it doesn't break down which sites have been visited. So if you have tickets available in multiple places and they are signposted from your site, you'll be able to create a custom tag in Tag Manager that will tell you exactly which sites have been clicked through to. And that's just by setting up your third-party sites in the event parameters. You also have site search. So as standard, that will track when users perform a search on your website, but you can customize that to differentiate between site search initiated, site search complete, and you can also drill down into the actual search queries, which will obviously be a lot more useful for, like, say, your web developer or your marketing team in terms of what are people not finding easily on your site and kind of volumes of that. You also have video engagement as standard that tracks start, progress, and completion, but you can also, similarly to the scroll depth, break that down by percentage. So that's really handy if you've got trailers on your landing pages, and you can also differentiate between the trailers as well as part of the events report. And then file download is another standard event that you can customize. So as standard, that will be a file has been downloaded. But if you want to customize this tag for your fundraising or your business development manager, you can customize this to provide a granular breakdown of which files have been downloaded. And you'll also be able to add that in as an event parameter. So these are not overly complex customizations. And the last one, form tracking. So as standard, that will track when a form has been submitted, but you can again break that down by specific form, form started, form completed, so you can see any drop-offs and potentially any issues with the forms on your site. And then as well, you can create completely custom tags, so like viewing an item from a list. So in this case, it might be viewing a show from your What's On page if it's in a list format. Or another engagement event that you might want to look at to better understand the customer journey is use GTM to track drop-offs maybe on your venue's calendar, on the show landing pages as well. And you can set up custom triggers to fire when users abandon any journeys, including kind of going through to make a ticket purchase. And you can also set up all of your e-commerce events in Google Tag Manager super quickly. That includes your add to basket, initiate checkout, purchase. And finally, as well, you can add all your social media pixels with Google Tag Manager in a few minutes as well. So in short, it's a super handy platform and definitely one that I would recommend you start using if you're not sort of doing that already. So what does it take to set this up? So if you've already got a Google Tag Manager account, or you've just set one up at the start of the session, if you have that open, you can then follow along for this section because I'll be talking you through where to find these things inside the platform. So when you create a Google Tag Manager account, you're asked to name your container, so your venue's name should be sufficient, and then add your website and define where the data is coming from. So in this case, it's web, or if you have an app as well, that can also be added. But once you've filled in these sort of fields, click to continue, you will then see this installation prompt on the screen. If you've already got an account for GTM, you can find this information by clicking the admin panel. So along the top, there's 3 options. Admin should be the third one. Click on admin, and then in the top left navigation, you can click install Google Tag Manager from that menu, and that will bring up this information. And again, just a reminder for Peppered customers, you can add your GTM container to your site by visiting the control panel and add in your ID and your scripts in the appropriate fields that pop up there. Just to sort of say, if you are doing that, your GTM container ID is located along the top right-hand side of the screen. So you will basically see this start with GTM dash. So in this case, it's GTM dash PP2XLP7T. So anyone not using Peppered, this is the point where you would need, if you're setting this up from scratch, this is the point that you would need to speak to your developer to get this added to your website within the relevant parts, so the head and the body, the 2 scripts that are available there. And once you've done that, you would then use the little bar at the bottom, type in your website, and then test that it's there. It'll tell you pretty quickly if it's not. So once that's done, you can then have a look at your dashboard. So this is what you would see when you log into your Tag Manager account once it's been properly set up. And you will land on the overview dashboard, which provides quick links to creating new tags, the number of recent workspace changes that have been made, and the number of unpublished updates. This is something that I especially find very handy. Just if you've been adding a lot of tags over multiple sessions, it is so easy to overlook actually publishing them. So that's always a really good bit to have a wee sense check, just to make sure that everything that you've added in recently has indeed been published to your site. And you also have access to the left-hand menu to navigate between your triggers, your tags, and your variables, and also folders and templates at the bottom. I'm going to talk about tags, triggers, and variables in a few slides, but I wanted to briefly sort of highlight the folders section. It's essentially a way for you to organize your tags so that they can easily be audited and located. So I always recommend using this sort of function as a best practice, but it's really useful, especially if you've got internal and external people using GTM as either admins or publishers. So you can add tags to folders by clicking the checkbox at the side of any tags that are created. And then you basically just use the icon for the folder with the arrow that's on the top right, and it will allow you to pop it in the relevant folder or create one. I always recommend having one for your GA4 setup and keep all of those together. If you're doing PPC, so Google Ads or Bing, you can either have these as separate folders, or you can have them all in the one sort of like paid search, for example. And the same goes for social media. If you're adding in your pixels this way, you can either have an overarching social media folder, or you can have separate. So if you're setting up conversion APIs for any of these channels, I would recommend having those separate. Conversion APIs are usually done via server-side tagging. That's something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing in-house. That's usually best done by a third party because it can be quite pernickety. But there's lots and lots of pixel technicians that you can even pick up on Fiverr for something like that. And then lastly, the templates section is just that. So templates that you have created and saved will appear in there. And then you also have the option to search GTM's gallery of templates for future and save them there for future use. So tags, triggers, and variables. Tags are the vehicle that's used to send data from one platform to another. And it can be virtually anything. So the examples would be your tracking pixels for social media, or code snippets for Google Ads, Google Analytics, events, or other marketing tools. So for example, Klaviyo as an email platform, you would also have tags in there as well. So yeah, an example would be a tag that's maybe sending data to GA4 as an event based on a specific button clicked on your website. And then we've got triggers. So these specify the conditions that must be met in order for data to be fired by your tag. So I always think of them as like ears that live on your website, and they just listen for events to occur, like page loads, clicks, form submissions, or scroll depth. And when the trigger detects the action that matches the conditions, it will then activate your tag and start sending data. And then lastly, variables. So these are like placeholders for dynamic values that kind of change during a sort of visitor session. Variables can be built-in ones, so standard to GTM. We're going to talk about that shortly, or they can be custom. So one thing that I always advise everybody to set up as a custom variable is a constant variable, which is your measurement ID for Google Analytics 4. You will use that a lot, so it's always good to have that in. It doesn't change, so it's just basically the information, like the numbers and letters that make up that code that get pulled in when you select that variable. So for variables, you need to configure these when you set up a new account. So the first thing I always do is navigate to the variables section of the left-hand menu, click configure in the top right. This then brings up the menu of standard variables, and then check any applicable boxes for things like click classes, scroll threshold. Essentially click to turn on everything under pages, clicks, forms, video, scrolling, and visibility initially. And then next, you can create your custom variable to house your Google Analytics 4 measurement ID. As, like I said, you will need that for pretty much everything GA4 event related. So to do that, you need to scroll right to the bottom of the variables dashboard and go to user defined variables. Click new in the top right, and this then opens up a menu so that you can select the type of variable that you'd like to create. And in this instance, you're looking for constant because the information doesn't change. You will then see this screen, and you need to name your variable. So it needs to be something very obvious. So I always just go with GA4 measurement ID, and then you add your GA4 measurement ID as the value. So your measurement ID is found within the GA4 admin panel under data streams. So if you go across to Google Analytics 4, you'll find it quite quickly there. And then all you need to do is press save, and then that's ready to publish. And the first tag that you should create when you're setting up a new GTM is your Google Analytics 4 tag. So please note for this, if you already have this set up natively on your site and you're going to be migrating this across to Google Tag Manager, before you switch on Google Tag Manager and publish everything, you need to make sure that your developers remove this natively from your site so that you're not going to be double counting. So navigate to the tag section, and that's on the left-hand menu, and then click new in the top right. Name your tag GA4 tag or whatever best fits your preferred naming conventions, as long as it's clear, because you don't want to make the mistake of switching this off by accident. And then, yeah, select Google Tag from the tag menu as your tag type. Add in your GA4 measurement ID as the variable in tag ID. And you can find this by using the little kind of Lego block at the side of that field, and you'll be able to search all your sort of enabled variables, including your user-defined ones. And then you want to add as your trigger, add initialization all pages to your trigger, because we want this to fire first when a page is loaded. And then save, and that's your tag ready to publish. So we'll pretend that that has been published. So now you would want to basically check that your first tag is firing. So you would want to go to preview mode, and this is how you would check any tag is working correctly. You go to preview mode, you will have this little pop-up appear. You type in your website, click connect, and what it will do is it will open up a new screen that has your website on it that you're going to be able to navigate through. And it also has the next screen that you see here. So this is what preview mode will look like. The goal here is to navigate through your venue's website on the new tab that opened, start clicking buttons, add things to cart, move things around. So what we'll be doing is basically seeing all the tags that sit at the bottom as tags not fired, move into the tags fired as you go through these actions. If you do something that should trigger a tag and it hasn't moved up, that's your sort of sign to go in and check the setup of that tag. Usually it's something to do with the trigger that's not set up correctly. That's usually your first place to start if there are issues. Okay, so let's move on to creating some standard and some custom tags with some commonly used examples. So the first one is a simple button click. So to set up this custom tag, basically for talking's sake, say when someone clicks get tickets on your website, or buttons could also be add to cart. These all vary website to website. So whatever it is that they're going to get tickets, I would set it up using this one. So from the tags page, you're going to click new. You're going to add your naming convention. So in this case, the button is called Get Tickets. So we'll call it Get Tickets button click. And then we're going to add GA4 event as your tag type. And then add your measurement ID variable next underneath that. And you can see that appear there. And it should always give you the green tick that it is actually found in the container. And then we're going to add the event name. So I would always go for the actual button name with an underscore in between. So in this case, it's get_tickets. And then we're going to add the trigger. So the trigger in this case is click all elements. Then we're going to select some clicks. And then we're going to look for the click ID, or if there's button text, but no sort of clear click ID that you can see in the inspect your website sort of tool that we'll talk about next slide. Either of those options should work. Sometimes some websites work better with one or the other. I usually go with click ID. I think it's just usually there's no gray areas. There's no sort of other buttons on your site that also use the same text. So where there's no variance, text is fine. Click ID is probably the better option most of the time. But to find that, you will go to your website, you will right click, and then you'll hit inspect. And that will open up this panel where you'll be able to inspect the website's code. And then you'll be able to scroll to look for your click ID as you hover over the button in question. Next one up is viewed items. So super handy for sort of engagement tracking, especially where there's been no ticket sale. It's also the sort of same process that you would set up add to cart, but there would be a different trigger in that case. So to set up viewing an item from a list, you will need to hit new at the top of your tags page, name the tag view item from list, select GA4 event, and then add your measurement ID underneath, again, looking for that green tick. And then add view_item as the event name, and then add your event parameters. So I'm going to list these as parameter plus their value. So items, and then with the double brackets around e-commerce items. And then value, again, double brackets around the e-commerce value, and the same for currency, double brackets around e-commerce currency. So if you've not already set up these values as variables, you can then add them in as e-commerce.items, e-commerce.value, e-commerce.currency. And that just pulls from your data layer. And then what you need to do is you need to add the trigger. So you will select a custom event as your trigger type and leave this as fires on all custom events, and then hit save, and that's ready to publish. For add to cart, you're going to want to set up a trigger that has the click ID for add to cart during your purchase journey. And then for site search queries, this one's super handy, both for your developer and for your marketing team as well. I've always found that it allows you to identify any sort of frequently asked question type information, or if there's a kind of break in the sort of user journey, if people are looking for a specific show, but it's maybe not appearing high up the list when it should, and so on. So to customize this, you want to be able to look at the actual search query. So in this case, for your trigger, we'll start with that first. Name it site search results. Sorry, we won't start with your trigger first, we'll start with the tag first. So yeah, tag first, so new tag in your tags section. You're going to name it site search results. Select GA4 event as your tag type and add in your measurement ID underneath. And then you're going to go search results as your event name. And then set your custom parameters for search query. So search underscore term would be your search term variable. And then to add your tag, create new, and then choose custom event, add site underscore search initiated, and then all pages, and then hit save, and that's you ready to publish. Next, for anybody who's using trailers on their site, I would say for this one, the two easiest implementation methods are where you're pulling your video content through from YouTube or from Vimeo. YouTube obviously being a Google product, and this obviously being a Google product, is always the kind of smoother option. So if that's something that's easily changed, it'll save you a lot of headaches. If it's not, you might need to create something a little bit more custom. So if you go to the tags page, hit new, then name it video status, select GA4 event, and then add video underscore status as your event name, and making sure that you also add your measurement ID as well. And then under parameters, you're going to want to add video current time with underscores between the words, and then adding the same but with dots between the words as your values. And the same for video duration, so underscores on the left-hand side, dots on the right-hand side. The same for video percent, video provider, video title, and video URL as well. Then you're going to want to add your trigger. So the easiest option, like I said, is YouTube trigger type. So as a best practice, I would always kind of recommend that. But equally, if you do need to create something custom, that's something that you can have a play around with. There's a lot of guides available online, a lot of YouTube videos as well. Or you can get a third party in to create the relevant tags for you. That sort of service is also available. So yeah, once you've selected YouTube as your trigger type, you're going to want to use the drop down to enable this trigger as DOM ready, and then select all videos, or if it's a very specific video, you can also do that on specific pages as well. If you're selecting a specific page, you're going to need that page URL first, and then contains, let's say, what's on, for example, or your venue's equivalent. And then scroll depth is another commonly used one. That is available as a standard tag and really easy to customize. So instead of just tracking 90% as standard, we're going to be able to break that up by percentage, which you can kind of see in the little pull-out box there. So for this, head to tags, create new, name your tag, so scroll depth percentage, add your measurement ID, and then select scroll depth threshold. So this is a standard variable that you should have switched on at the start. So that should be easy to pull through from the list. If you select that little sort of Lego block beside it, you'll be able to access it there. Then for the trigger, you're going to select scroll depth as your trigger type, and then select either vertical scroll or horizontal scroll. So Normally, most people will go for vertical scroll, but horizontal scroll is super handy if you've got maybe a carousel of other events and shows that they might be interested in. You can also do it that way as well, but you will need to create 2 separate tags for that. And you will need to make sure that they're named in a way that it's very easy to understand what is what when it pulls through to Google Analytics. So yeah, once you've kind of done that, you will add your percentages. So select percentages, the tick box, and then add 10, 25, 50, 75, and 90 with commas between. You can also be a lot more granular if you wish, but that should suffice. Then select all pages and then save your trigger, save your tag, and that's now ready to publish. So for file download, if you want to break this down by file name, important to note here, if you are saving your files and then uploading them, just make sure your naming conventions are on point. I've seen many clients over the years kind of not save these very well and have kind of names that don't really make much sense pull through as events, which can be a bit annoying for your tracking. So make sure you do that in advance. But head down to the variables section on the left-hand side menu, select user-defined variable. This is kind of noted at the bottom of the page, as we'd mentioned before. Add file name as your variable type, and then you're going to want to add this custom JavaScript and add this script in the field. So your variable type is custom JavaScript, and then this will be pasted in. All of this will kind of be shared afterwards, so you will be able to just sort of copy and paste that in. And then you also need to create another variable, and that's called file extension. And this time you select an auto event variable and an element URL as your variable type, and file extension as the component type. Hit save after that, and then next you need to create a link trigger called link click file download. Name this accordingly, as you can kind of see on screen here. Select click just links as your trigger type, and then select some links. In the conditions field, you're going to add the file name variable in the first box. Then you're going to add matches regex, ignore case in brackets, in the second box. And then add all the file names that you see in the red box at the bottom there in white. And then hit save, and now you're ready to create your tag. So for this tag, add new, select GA4 event, add your measurement ID, again looking for that green tick. And then you're going to add your trigger, sorry, not trigger, you're going to add the file name variable to the event name, as you can see here. Then you're going to add your trigger, which is link click file name from your saved triggers, and then hit save. And last one is your form submission. So as standard, that's just a form has been submitted. But this is to break that down as to which form. So if you've got to contact us, join our team, group bookings, make a donation for not-for-profits, you can break those down so that they're all tracking. So again, new tag, name it form submissions, GA4 event as your tag type, add your measurement ID, and then use your little Lego block to find form ID, which will be your placeholder, and that allows you to pull dynamically the form names that have been fed through GA4 without kind of setting up individual form tags for those. And then you're going to add form submission trigger. If it doesn't already appear in the list of triggers available, as this is a built-in one, you can go to your variables and switch that on so it should appear. And once this has been added, save both, save your trigger, save your tag, and that's you ready to publish. And then to publish your your tags, you will head up to the big submit button at the top right-hand corner, and you're going to push that button. This is what should appear. So before you submit any updates, you need to kind of name a version history. So I usually opt for like version 1, version 2, with a couple of words that kind of explain what you've done. So if this has been set up brand new, you're going to say version 1, add core tags or initial setup. And then you can also list the tags that you've added in the second bit I've highlighted in red there, so just details of what you've done, and that just helps if anybody's auditing it in the future, or you need to kind of look back and kind of see what's happened, that will all appear there. And then once that's been done and you have continued, this is what will appear. If there are any issues with your tags, your triggers, variables even, you'll get an error message at this stage, and it's going to highlight which tags, triggers, and variables you need to review. And then integrating with GA4 and seeing your data. So when you set up events in GTM, they're going to automatically flow through to your GA4 event report. This is due to being set up as your standard GA4 event tag. The good thing about that is they're already integrated. So you can pull any events that you set up in GA4 into both custom, GTM, in GA4, custom and standard reports. For the standard reports, all you need to do is select the little blue plus sign in the first column, and you're going to select events and then select either event name to break it down, or you can select key event depending on whether you want to track engagement or you're wanting to track e-commerce events. So you can pull any trackable event into your Explore reports as well. These reports are really excellent for helping you identify drop-offs, what drives ticket sales, which campaigns perform best. And there's a wide range of the sort of templated Explore reports, as well as the completely self-build free-form reports. But the templated reports are your cohort report, which explores behaviours and performance of groups of users linked by common attributes, so age, gender, location. And then you've got your funnel exploration report. That allows you to visualize the kind of steps a user takes to complete a task. So it could be a purchase, it could be a form submission, it could be using the calendar, getting to the point of using the calendar on your event pages. But that one's great for identifying drop-offs. You've also got a segment overlap report that shows how different user segments relate to each other. So another great one to identify like new audience segments who maybe meet more complex criteria. And then you've got a user exploration report that allows you to granularly break down what sort of segments make up any core customers or visitors that you've identified. And then path exploration, that's basically just to visualize the various paths that someone will take when they land on your site. And you've also got a user lifetime report just to assess user behavior and the value of users over time as well. This is what your GA4 event report is, or what it looks like. This is obviously your standard, one of your standard reports, but this is sort of the first place that I would visit after setting up a new event in GTM. I would also note here, you need to wait, if it's brand new, you will need to wait about 48 hours to make sure all your data is pulled through. And yeah, so this report is found under engagement. And then when you see kind of the list of reports under there, you're going to hit events. And again, you can kind of see that little plus sign beside event name. You can also break this down by landing page, referral channel, show whatever you would like for that. And then I hope you've found this this useful, and you're keen to start using Google Tag Manager or using it more. But before we move on to answering the questions that you guys might have live, I did want to highlight there are literally thousands and thousands of videos on this and articles on the web. So if you need to set up any Google tags, most likely you'll be able to find detailed instructions on how to do that. Also, there are many agencies and freelancers that are able to come in and assist with projects to set this up, migrate all your native tags over, and even onboard your team. That's something that my agency also offer, but there are lots of options out there to help venues get this going properly. So yeah, if you would like to discuss how Evolare can help, my email address is on the next page. But as I said, you'll have lots of options to kind of help you be self-sufficient as well. So even if you want to give it a crack yourself, or you can also hire agencies like Evolare to do training one-to-one as well. And we've actually got a couple of questions that were asked in advance, so I'm going to quickly cover those on the next 2 slides, and then any live questions can be answered after that. So the first one was actually to check how consent settings are, like if they're correct and if they're working. So for this one, just wanted to mention how you would quickly integrate consent settings with your GTM container so that your tags only fire once consent has been given. There is a GTM template available for this task, and Matt's going to quickly share that so that you can access instructions via the link that should be appearing shortly. But essentially, you need to create 2 tags, one a default command and one is an update command. You then need to configure the default command to fire on consent initialization. And you can also customize this based on your venue's specific requirements around consent. There's more details kind of in that link that's just been shared. But you will also need to configure the URL pass-through behavior for this setup to work. The template that's shared doesn't do that automatically, but there are instructions on how to do that within this as well. And then next, you need to configure the update command to fire on the trigger when the consent changes. So you will need to configure each consent type. So normally there's usually 2, so accept or decline, or accept fully, accept only essential, or decline. And once you've published the tags, you're then able to confirm they're working as expected in your preview mode, which is what we kind of talked about a few slides ago. So I hope that answered the question, but equally, if that wasn't quite what you were asking, the person who'd asked this, feel free to pop me an email after this and I can make sure that I answer more fully if that wasn't quite what you were after. And the next one is, how do you set up Facebook pixels for promoters who have one event coming up? So this isn't really a GTM question, that's all handled within Meta's Business Manager. So just to clarify my interpretation of the question, to share data with a promoter who's going to be advertising their event that's hosted at your venue. So you're going to want advertising data to be available to you, and they're going to want website data to be available to them, so they can retarget and things like that. So if that's the case, you're going to want to share the pixel with the promoter. So you're going to want to head to Business Manager, and you're going to need admin access for this. So if you don't already have that, you're either going to need to up your permissions, or you're going to have to find someone who has that access within your venue. But from Business Manager, you head to Business Settings. You're going to scroll down the left-hand side, select Data Sources. That's the menu shown on the left there. And then you're going to see your current pixel. So that's shown on the right of the screen. You then want to assign a partner. So what you'll need from the promoter is their business ID. And this is found in your promoter's business information, which is the tab pretty much located at the top within Business Settings and Meta. Once you've entered that business ID, you can toggle the relevant permissions on. As you can see underneath, this partial access or full access. I would imagine partial access should be more than sufficient. I would imagine not many, if any, of your promoters would need full access. So yeah, toggle on partial. And then lastly, your promoter, once you've assigned that, your promoter is going to have to accept that invitation, and then the sharing of data should happen from there on out. But yeah, once that's completed, they're going to be able to run ads and retarget web activity. I hope that answered the question, but again, if that wasn't quite what you were after, feel free to email me after and I can kind of go through a more detailed response to that question if that missed the mark.
Lynn, that was good. Before we move on, I'll just start sharing some of the resources. So in a chat, I'll just share a link to the presentation. You know, I know Lynn shared kind of some bits and pieces that you might want to be able to copy and paste. So those are places you can do that. I'll also share a kind of PDF version of that in the handouts on the right hand side if you want that as well. And then feel free to start sending in. If you have any questions, feel free to kind of start typing them into chat. I'll get to those in a sec. But one last thing that I'll want to share is just to gather some feedback from you guys about what it is that you might want to learn next around analytics, so we can figure out what the next webinar will be. I think we potentially are looking into doing one around Looker Studio at some point. So maybe keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I'll share that feedback form that should be in the bottom left-hand corner for you guys now to just leave any feedback that you have. I haven't seen any questions come in yet, so do feel free to send any. But one thing that question that I have, Lynn, is that I know that GTM has a lot of kind of standard variables and event triggers. For a venue, how far do those triggers take me in terms of understanding audiences, and how should I be digging into more kind of custom events and variables to learn more about my audience?
I mean, I find usually when I'm doing the setup for clients, a lot of the time your standard variables will be the things that are needed 90% of the time. But I mean, a custom variable can literally be anything. It really does depend on how complex the user journeys are that you're trying to track. So a custom variable that I can think of the top of my head that you would need would be if you were wanting to more granularly track engagement on your calendar, for example. If you've got a kind of short runtime for a show, you might want to break that down by date. So that would absolutely be a custom variable that I think probably a lot might find useful. But I would imagine most other queries can be handled with more of your standard variables.
Yeah. And just another question, obviously a key part of a lot of venues' website is when people kind of add a ticket and then they go on through to the purchase path. How easy would it be for a venue to kind of set up variables and triggers connected to various parts of the purchase path?
So there's e-commerce variables that you would set up as standard, and they are technically custom variables. But yeah, so that would handle kind of if they're putting in payment information and then abandoning things like that. Is there anything within the purchase journey that you're thinking of as a specific example?
Yeah, that is exactly what you mentioned there. Looking at drop-off is, I think, the most common thing people are looking at, making sure that the purchase path is frictionless and that people are making through. I think one of the most frustrating things that people probably find is when people drop off at some point in the purchase path, because you're just like, yes, they're through, they've mentally committed to buying the ticket, but at some point they've clearly dropped off. And I think that's something that a lot of people would want to find out about, because more often than not, I think it's often a kind of issue in terms of the experience, and there's some kind of friction that's blocking people, and maybe people want to find out about that.
Yeah. Well, let's say for talking's sake, your purchase path has 5 pages. Hopefully it doesn't, but let's say it does. You'd be able to set up a tag to basically say when each page was initiated, so you can pinpoint which page they fell off at. For a 5-page sort of process, I would imagine anything after 3, you're probably going to see a lot of people get fed up. So yeah, you can do things like that as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Cool. We don't have any questions yet, so I don't know if anyone has anything for now for us to cover. But I guess really next steps for people, if they do want to kind of learn more about GTM, as Lynn mentioned, there are lots of resources out there. But if you're looking for more personalized help, I definitely recommend getting in contact with Lynn or Evolare Digital to kind of see how she could help you guys with more personal service. I don't know if there's any other closing notes you want to leave us with, Lynn?
No, I don't think so. I think we've kind of covered a lot today, but GTM's not as scary a place as it can sometimes seem. I know lots of clients I've worked with over the years find it very off-putting to start with, but a lot of your standard tags are very easy to figure out. I would definitely always recommend having a bash at anything that is standard, using some of the guides. Best way to learn is just to kind of get hands-on, but anything custom, absolutely. There's so many people, agencies, even like my own, can help you with that. So having a very clear sort of brief on what you're wanting to achieve, that can then be broken down in the amount of tags that need to be activated in order to achieve that.
Cool, brilliant. Well, I think that's it for us now then. I guess the only last things I want to say is, do keep an eye out on the Cult Suite website if you're looking for more kind of skills training webinars. We have an events and webinars page where we host in-person webinars or in-person kind of events and sessions, and online webinars covering a wide range of topics for arts and culture organizations. Equally, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, that's also another way to kind of stay in touch with the kind of resources and webinars we're sharing as well. So do kind of check out the Cult Suite website if you want to learn more about that. Otherwise, I think that's it for now. And thank you very much for everyone attending. For those that haven't probably got hold of the recorded video by now, so that's all good. And as always, just reach out if there's any questions. Until then, thank you and goodbye.